Hey everybody, it's Thursday.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Night Bite.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And so far, we are here live with you this evening. And we got to be honest, we don't have our guests queued up. So they may join in at a certain point, but we actually just touched base with them like yesterday. So hope all is well, and they may jump in at some point. But if you are just joining us, we are going to be here talking about our weekend and how fishing is right now. So we are about to give you our fishing report and all of that good stuff. But if you are tuning in, let us know where you're from or what your water temperatures are like or how fishing has been. I feel like this is the time of year when everybody gets out. I don't know why. Maybe people on shore, maybe people with boats and all of that. So if you have been out there, let us know how it's going.
Yeah, I mean, it's been kind of crazy. So
one thing that we did different this week already is that we went back to bringing fishing reports.
Yeah.
So we were really consistent about that for a while, especially when we lived at our old house, which feels so long ago, and also like a blink of an eye yesterday. And then we just weren't sure. I don't know, but people seem to like it, so we brought it back. And it's a fun thing to do, and so we'll share that with you Monday mornings.
Mhm.
We used to post that to YouTube as well as Facebook, but this week, I just posted it to Facebook. So if you were there, you got that sneak peek. And so how did fishing go this past weekend? Our Saturday, we were told that we were going to be, I was going to say rained out. I can deal with a little bit of rain, but like thunder and lightning out. So we did all other kinds of, I don't know, errands and stuff, things that you have to do. And so Sunday was our fishing day. And so we got out, and the morning we did a whole lot better than the afternoon. So one of the funny things is people always talk about how when there's a storm coming in,
Hey Santa.
that the fish seem to bite, that they seem to turn on. I feel like I always hear that. So in our case, that's not what it felt like happened.
No, I mean, we just kind of, we took our time. We got up to the lake. Hey Gene. And yeah, I think we just we hadn't been to, this is one of our favorite places to fish in the area so far, and we haven't even been there yet
They're
this
all
year.
our
So
favorite. That's the problem.
that's the problem. There's too much water. So we go up there, and we're like thinking maybe we could get on a trolling bite, just because some of the other area lakes had a pretty decent trolling bite going on. And so we just wanted to check in, see where this one was at. Plus, with the TKI stuff that we just put on our boat, we wanted to play around with the live scope a little bit. And so just got out into a little bit of a deeper lake and just messed around a little bit and checked structure first before we went and trolled.
Well, that's a good point. I was going to say, let's break down our day.
Yeah.
And that is what we did first. And to be honest, I forgot about that. But it's because I think it's how we, what do they call it? They bookended our day or something. We started and we ended there. And so one of the things, I guess my first question, what brought you out there to begin with? Because when I think spring, I always think shallow, but I always think that like not super shallow, 6, 8, 10 feet. But you went right to some of these deeper cribs. What brought you there?
I mean, I think you got to remember that like spawn isn't something that all happens at once, right? And so there's fish that go up early and then they leave, and there's fish that continue to come up, and then once the majority of the fish are done, there's still fish up shallow, but then there's a lot of fish out deep, and we're kind of towards the end of that bell curve a little bit. And so and even during the spawn, like deeper fish tend to be some of the bigger fish, because the females like to hang out on some of that mid-lake structure, and that's where a lot of the stuff that spawns early, like walleyes and pike, like to hang out in that mid-lake structure, because that's where the bait is. That's why everything's kind of hanging out there. Yeah, and so I just decided to go out there and check. Just, it can be high risk, high reward. You can go out there and there can be just a bunch of smalls sitting on the structure, hiding from stuff, and no big fish in the area. Or you could pick off a couple of big fish, whether it's anything from bluegills to muskies. They all hang around that little bit of structure. And so that was kind of my thought. just see what was out there. And
can I jump in?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's when we got to this spot and we put the live scope in. And so when I say put it in, some people have different mounts and they bend or they twist or whatever, but we have the capability to take the live scope totally off with this TKI setup. And so we were able to put that in and put it on. And now here is the thing: is we don't talk about this all that often, right? But we got live scope at the very, very, very end of ice season, like so end of ice season that we didn't even get to use it on ice. Okay, we watched it melt and I was so sad. The thing is, you're not going to use, you don't use live scope in super, super shallows. And so when we went out to these deeper cribs, it was kind of the first opportunity to really be using this. And so I will admit that I am not totally an expert yet, but what I was able to identify is, first of all, this structure, this crib, crystal clear, and that there was a whole group of fish that were right above the crib, and they were all just swimming around right above it. It was great. Now, what I also was seeing is bigger, darker marks coming in towards the crib and sometimes hanging out in the middle. And so obviously that is some of these bigger predators. And so I'm not sure. Did we catch anything in the morning? Honestly, They were at the crib.
Yeah, that was my first fish. I caught that. I actually just posted that fish this morning, because one of my new favorite setups that I started using the end of last open water season. I was going to try it this ice season and I never got to it, and so it's still on my list for some ice fishing with it. But the hover rig, I busted that back out. It's been one of my all-time favorite things to throw, just because it's almost you're fishing with a suspended jerk bait, but it's a jig, right? So I can swap out a suspended jerk bait color as fast as I can change colors with plastic. And instead of having a hard body jerk bait, I have a soft body jerk bait, and it's super cool. I really like the whole thing. If you don't know much about it, go look it up, because it's a really cool
Well, and you
technique.
just posted it.
Yeah.
And so check out your page.
Yeah.
I was going to post it to Crappie Junction today, and maybe I will right now because I said it. So it should be there coming up in the future. But it is a really cool, unique way that it makes the bait swim kind of lifelike. And so that was cool that you pulled up right away.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty nice walleye.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say that the forward facing sonar had really much to do with our success. If we would have thrown out a buoy, we could have been doing pretty much the same thing. And we're still learning how to use it, trying to dial in. A lot of our baits are kind of small, and so it's hard to see them on there. Just learning stuff. So it was kind of fun to pull that right away, and then it kind of slowed down for me. And so Emily pulled some really nice stuff off the crib. So what were you doing with catching your fish?
I think I was just doing cast retrieve with a leechy type bait. To be honest, this is so terrible of me. I should know this based on the things that we do and talk about. I switch colors so many times on Sunday. I don't even remember what caught fish and not. And I think part of because I have a few ideas of in this lake what will and won't work. And I've had success on a few new colors this year. And so I had a few profiles, had a few styles, yada yada. There was no pattern. That's what I'm saying. I caught this on that, and this on that, and this on that. Because one thing that we will get, I'm gonna get ahead of myself, but it was a multi-species day, right? And so at this crib, there was smallies and there was walleyes, and there was all those fish that I described that were suspended above the crib. And so one of the things that I learned, well, I guess in reflection of the day, is that what I should have done is I should have taken out, I'm going opposite on the camera. Oh, doing it again. I should have taken out the AquaView, because we were almost close enough that I could have seen it. And now in hindsight, I was able to learn the fish that were above those crib, I think, were too small. I think that these were baby little crappies. And I caught one that was really small, handheld. I'll probably post that picture soon, right? But I think we spent a little while wondering at the size of these fish because we were getting to know the graph. So we talked about how the graph wasn't the reason that we caught fish, but it was the reason that we stayed longer than we otherwise would have, is because we were seeing these different fish sitting there or moving around or whatever. So I'm ultimately going to move ahead and say one of the reasons that we moved, I hate to say it, is our trolling motor, right? So look at Josh's face. He's like, I hate to admit that. Okay, because what's happening is we have the Gen 1 of the spot lock. And so when we were trying to fish this crib and and then it was like here, there, here, there, here, there. And it was honestly, it just like got to be a lot. And so the option was that there were other ways to fish that day. There were other options. And so we came to troll, and the water was warming up. It always works a little bit better when the water starts to warm up. And so I think that's what we switched to.
Yeah, I think once it warms up a little bit, the fish kind of sit in their daytime little hidey holes, and that's where I think trolling really helps, especially if you do have a really good weed line. Unfortunately for us, we didn't have that great of a weed line. We had some clumps of weeds, but we didn't really have a nice straight beds or, even bigger beds to go past. We had just little scattered clumps, but we still picked up a few fish. Lots of walleyes, up shallow, because we're trolling between 4 and 6 feet right now this time of year. And so
let's point out that one of the reasons for that is because what we normally do as that water warms up to a full summer temperature is that you're trolling those weed lines, right? This is what we talk about all the time, but this is that funny time of year where those weed lines are not there yet, or they're just starting to develop. And so what you can do is, as you drive along, as you troll along, right, with your trolling motor, and you can see where the weeds are growing up, right? And so those fish are still hanging out in those weeds, even though they're short like that. And so instead of trolling next to them, I guess my goal was to troll my bait as over the top of that as I could.
Yeah, I mean, I think where we were fishing, that was applicable. I mean, weeds this time of year vary so much, not only from lake to lake, like even 5 miles down the road, 2 different lakes could have 2 different sets up. You have to play this game by ear, because there is no hard and fast rule. You just have to adjust what you're doing in the moment, because like we said, we had a good trolling bite on a different lake that was, 20 minutes away. And that had some really nice setup weed lines. It had really long areas that we could troll. And we were picking up better crappies. This other lake, not so much. But you can still figure it out, right? And so we were just going around figuring it out, and we just kept catching all kinds of stuff. Well, you did. You caught all kinds of stuff. I was mostly driving the boat.
Well, okay. So I'll say this first. As we are driving around this lake, there are certain spots where there's, I don't know, like boulders, rock beds, gravel, or like super weedy, mucky, or like, what do they call that? Like eelgrass stuff, or it's like rice, or I don't know what that, like grassy, whatever that. What I'm saying is that sometimes you go to a lake and the whole thing is just the same all around, and this lake is not like that. And so when you have these different mini ecosystems within the whole lake or whatever, I don't know if this is not scientific, people, but I'm saying that these different fish were hanging out in different places. And so we know that when we fished like shallower by wood, we found rock bass. When we were over by the boulders, we had a better chance at the smallies and the walleye and probably rock bass. But when we were trolling, honestly, okay, so we were looking for crappies, and I think we found 1 or 2, but we found all these great perch. And so it just was a really interesting day, how depending on what we were trolling past is kind of a little bit determining of the bite. So, I mean, I think to some extent that's what made me choose a bait. That I don't know, like guide your choices for the day. I guess I tried to be as then, if anything can bite, I want to choose like the most versatile bait. So usually I go with a minnow, but this time I went with a leech. I don't know. It's early.
Well, and we had, bringing up baits, we had a little bit of a controversy today. It was like a mini controversy on the post that we put up this morning. Just because somebody had mentioned something about the ratio between Emily's bait profile and like then the jig head
and the hook and the jig
head that she was using. And so
you can go look at it. It wasn't really a crisis, but somebody pointed out that technically speaking, the jig and the hook size were too small. It was mismatched for the plastic I was using. But it wasn't really, because I guess when we were talking about how we were going over that weed edge, one of the things I decided to do is size down the weight of my jig. And so I went to that 32nd. Now, that 32nd is a perfect size for crappies because I've used it a ton of times for that. It's a perfect time for if some of these bluegills they're not spawning, they're out in these waters, whatever. You'll catch a bluegill trolling, or in summer especially, you'll catch bluegills trolling with that 32nd out hook. The perch, we caught that, but I can still catch a walleye. I can still catch a smallie. I can still catch a whatever else is in that lake. And so what I did is I chose that bait size for what I thought those fish were eating. And then I just put the hook in and the weight in that was going to work. And so technically speaking, it was a little bit mismatched, but it worked perfect for my circumstance.
Yeah. Just thinking outside the box.
Well, okay. So when we're thinking about, because I was trying to troll over the top of the weeds, right? When you're trying to troll next to the weeds, that's different. Use a 16th, whatever. In my opinion, that's a lot of times. But when you think of how much water is in the water column, like between where the weeds are growing up and where the water top is, there really is only so much water, right? And it's funny, sometimes you can even see these bites. The fish come up. It's like my jig isn't that far out from the boat. I like cast it out just like a tiny bit, and so it's like you would think that doesn't happen, but that's exactly how it works. So it is really look at your face, because it is so fun. It is so fun. And sometimes, because I'll fish on the front of the boat, Josh will be in the back, and I'll cast out a tiny bit, and he'll be like, I can see your jig. And it's like fish just come out still right next to the boat sometimes. I never would believe it. If I did not see it, it just happens.
I think a lot of that has to do with when you're trolling panfish, it's not a fast endeavor, right? A lot of times, like, people throwing swim jigs or stuff for bass, or like maybe you're casting for pike or muskies or something, and you're probably going twice as fast. Even people pulling like worm harnesses and stuff for walleyes are usually blowing past us when we're trolling for panfish. So it's not a super fast endeavor. It is productive though.
It is. It is, to be honest.
Yeah.
So if there's anybody who is just joining us and looking forward to our guests, we honestly just spoke with them like yesterday and set all this up and make sure it was all a go. And so I hope that all is well with them, but they are not here with us tonight. So if you have specific questions or comments or things along the way, or a fishing report, drop that in the comments. We would love to chat about that. Otherwise, we are going through a weekend a little bit. And one of the things that we tried that we didn't get to yet is we did do a little bit of bobbering, or float fishing. But I would say that was not our most productive technique this weekend.
No, there was some fish up shallow, but the ones that were up shallow were like up against the bank, or they were under some cover that was right up against the bank. There's a few, there was smallmouth on beds. We left them alone. And yeah, there wasn't really anything holding on docks at this lake yet. So, the only place we didn't really check, there was some like shallow mud flats that we didn't check. And like a bigger rock pile, and some of the main lake. We didn't, because it's not super deep, right? It's only
and
20
like a
feet
whole
deep.
Bay and like whatever shore. No, I just funny how like when you sit and you come up with it and like the behind the island and the whatever and the I don't know, you could just
she's making fun of me.
No, like, I just want to fish everywhere.
Well, it's a 500 acre lake, so it's not giant, but it is tough to fit into a whole day, especially if you're not there at the crack of dawn and you don't leave at sunset. So, but no, I think we covered a majority of the lake, lots of the shoreline that we usually are successful on, and there's only a few areas that maybe we could have went to, but I don't really think. It's just sometimes it's a tough lake to fish, just like any lake, but just this one in particular, it has some quirks, and we're still figuring those out. So
just like any of them, I think that is true though. The other thing that we didn't talk about yet, first of all, is the millions of mosquitoes that must have hatched in this time since the previous weekend to last weekend, because man, I don't remember the force of mosquitoes that like what we saw. It makes me consider like, I don't know, I need like a beekeeping suit or like a bug shirt or something to like load and unload the boat. I don't know, it sounds ridiculous, but man, there was like a ton of mosquitoes out there. And one of the reasons that I say this is because as we were leaving, we're pretty good at cleaning up and making a quick exit. But in this case, there was actually something going on. And they are doing, I was going to call it a boat survey, and then I was going to call it a fish survey, and probably neither of those are right. Do you know what that is called?
Yeah, the DNR is conducting creel surveys at the landings on a few lakes off of Highway 45. And, they let everybody know that they'll have people post out there all summer. And what the creel surveys are good for, they kind of track what people are keeping, what types of fish are being caught, how they're being caught, and putting that into a management strategy for those bodies of water. And that happens every state and every organization is different, but usually that's on a.
So what that means though is that it's less about like what people are keeping, assuming that people are keeping within their limits and everything, but it's more about so that they can keep up with those management plans. I think sometimes people are so reluctant to talk to the person at the boat landing, like assuming like you're here to like shut things down, or I don't know, like people have a bad attitude. I don't know what they're assuming about it, right? But this isn't necessarily about like policing the boat landings. This is about like making sure that it's like a healthy ecosystem so that there's fish for the future.
Yeah, I was gonna say about every 10 years they do these surveys, and then what they do is they write management strategies. And so what that does is it dictates like what the take limits would be, if they're going to stock the lakes, kind of gives them an idea of what type of fish, so they can accurately put in there, like, if they put their survey nets out and, 100 people go out this summer and they catch like a bunch of pumpkin seed, but in their survey nets, they only get one. Well, that's saying that they're not getting a very good catch rate in their survey nets of pumpkin seed, but there's obviously a good population. And so we
didn't catch any pumpkins.
No, I'm just saying like that's how they kind of use this stuff, and then they'll post it. It's kind of hard in Wisconsin to kind of find the numbers, but you can look up fish surveys. They'll post the reports. It's buried in the website somewhere. It's not like it's secret. It's just not a lot of people are looking.
You got to find the lake and yada yada and all the things. But one of the things that we found is that typically these people are like really nice. And so I don't know, we've ran into this situation a few times over the years at a few different lakes. And, it is kind of fun because sometimes I was talking about our day. Oh, the morning was way better than the afternoon, for whatever reason, and that is fine. But when you end on not the high note, it's easy to be like, man, I wish we would have caught more fish, right? But when you're at that boat launch and you're having that minute to reflect, and they're like, how many perch did you catch? And you're like, dang, like probably like 100, and it's like, okay, probably 12. But when you also caught like 4 or 6 smallies, and you also caught like 6 or 8 walleyes, and you also caught a bunch of crappies, and then you also, and it's like, dang, we did catch a lot of fish, and that was all in the morning, and so it was kind of a fun thing for me. And it was also really, I don't know that you probably weren't paying attention to this, or maybe you were, but he would ask like, oh, how many perch? And then we'd both throw out a number. It was nice when our number matched. Like,
well, I mean, it's just general.
You're like mentally counting. No, but sometimes you're like, man, am I overestimating it? And so when we do, it was like, oh yes, that was just funny. I was just watching, and it's like our numbers were matching up, and I was like, it was just funny. I was just laughing at that. I mean, that's the thing, is you should count your fish, but if we're catching and releasing, then it doesn't matter as much. And so it was just one of those funny moments. It was like a little game almost. Oh, we just got a message from Steve. They are trying to sign in, but service in the area is really bad. And they're out in the middle of Canada. I guess that's not probably true.
I'm trying to sign in with Starlink, and it's just not.
It's just not working.
They're not in a good area.
there is like storms that have been coming through and
Yeah.
all of this kind of stuff. And so that is totally fine. And I'm glad that all is well over there, except for internet. So that's funny.
problem.
And we'll have them on again.
Yeah.
If you were interested in who the special guest is, I guess we can spoil it. Steve does do all kinds of tournaments and stuff. And so I think that they were just out fishing yesterday. I wish I could show this picture, but it never. Oh yeah, Kevin is his tournament partner. Well, it's funny that the green screen is like, he has a very blue shirt. Green screen is blurring it out. Whoops. Anyways.
No, what are you doing?
Whatever. That's a nice walleye. I'm just looking
Kevin
at that
Carl
picture.
is Steve's fishing partner. They're working on fishing the Walleye Classic up in Canada. So good luck to them. We'll have them on.
We'll have them on again.
We'll get them. But
Whenever,
that was the
whenever the
special
internet
guest.
connects up to Canada. We should just go up and visit them. I guess then our internet would not work up there. We'd have to record a show and then send it to you guys. That would be a whole different thing.
Oh man, if any of you guys are listening to this on podcasts, you guys really should. If you haven't caught a live show, you guys really should, because Emily is like a really visual presenter, and so like when you guys are listening to this and she's like, "Oh, look at this," and she's putting stuff up in the camera, and you guys can't even see anything.
Okay, wait. When we look behind the scenes, we don't normally talk about this on the air, but one of our most listened to podcasts is the episode where we were shooting plastics.
You were shooting.
Fully visual episode. We described what we did as we went through it, but it was super funny that that's just like such a listen to podcast. So who knows? Maybe we'll do more of that in the future, but I guess I didn't realize that's what our audience was here for. So if it is, hit us up. We'll roll with it, because that's what we do in our spare time anyways, make baits, and that's funny.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I guess as far as today's episode, at least we were able to check in with our guests for a short time, and we will certainly have them on again. As far as our fishing weekend, we talked about what we did last weekend, and man, we have had a week of rain since last weekend. So going into this coming weekend, are there things that we are going to do differently to set us up for success?
Well, first of all, I'm going to throw this PSA out there for all my hunter friends. Use this if you're in central Wisconsin, use the next few days of really nice, cool weather to go set your stands up if you haven't set them up yet, or if you need to go trim trees. It's supposed to get hot out, and none of us like doing that when it's hot. And so this is Mother Nature telling us, go do it now, or else you're going to pay for it later. So I'm going to do that on Friday, maybe Saturday morning if the rain holds off a little bit. Hey, Jeff. And this weekend, though, I'm kind of debating. I don't know if I want to go. Well, I think it's going to be dictated by what the potential wind is. I know, everyone knows if you get out a little earlier or stay out a little later, the wind does tend to calm down a little bit. Staying out later this time of year equals more bugs. And so, well, mosquitoes, flies, whatever. They tend to be a little bit worse in the evening than in the morning, I think, just because the mornings are cooler. So I don't know. If it does end up being breezy, I'm thinking maybe hitting something that's a little bit smaller, one of our small pocket lakes. Otherwise, I don't know. We've had some good success this spring, and it's hard to not want to keep going back to some of those other spots, but there's other stuff we want to look at too, so it's tough to pick.
It's funny because I asked like how to set ourselves up for success for the weekend, and all you talked about was the lakes to go to. But I think
that's setting
I
yourself
mean,
up
I guess
for
yeah,
success.
that's true. Well, that is.
How are you going to set yourself up for success?
Well,
You said we, but then you asked me. So now I'm saying, how are we going to set ourselves up for success? Asking you.
okay. On my trolling rod from the previous weekend to last weekend, I talked about how I needed to change my leader material
Wait.
from.
You need to
4
set
pound,
up your
6
other
pound
rod.
test.
You have a panhandler.
You're getting ahead of me.
Okay.
My trolling rod, I said I was going to go from a 4 pound to 6 pound test. And so I did that.
Yeah.
It's like you were not even listening to what I was saying. That's a whole
did.
different rod. You're like a
I
one track mind. You're so concerned. You set it up.
No, Oh, I will, and then I will steal it. I'll use a pink rod. I don't care.
Oh my gosh. So my trolling rod, I was way more successful with the 6-pound leader material. Like I said, the smallies, the walleyes, we had a lot of bigger fish that were kind of biting on throughout the day. And even still a few times I found that, okay, like smallies, they don't really have teeth, but they have that like super sandpapery lip. And so you catch enough of them and they'll like fray your line up, you know? And so I found that at one point I did need to retie a knot or two, right? But I was way more successful with that. And so that was awesome. As far as my bobber rod, okay, here's my problem, but I'm not gonna solve it before this coming weekend. I'll be honest with you. There is like backer line on the reel because there's like a really light braid on it. And I like the braid. I really like the braid. How my bobber rod works is all right. But the knot where the backer material meets the braid, I have spooled and unspooled this a million times to get this braid out of the way, or this knot. And every time I cast, the braid gets stuck on this little stinking knot. And so I need to find a way to make this different. I don't know. I don't know. If you have a suggestion at home, if you know what I'm talking about, hit me up. Every time I go to cast it out and it just like gets caught in that little knot. So anyways, I'm going to have to fix that at some point. But at this point, we're not doing like huge long range casting. It's honestly not affecting me like all that much or whatever. So I don't know. Who knows? I do need to order some bobbers. I need some new bobbers. But then I do have a whole nother rod to set up. And so that's our ultralight. And so it is a JT rod. And I'm really excited for it. I wasn't sure that honestly we had line or reel to go on it, but I think actually I figured that out. So what was stopping me from getting it set up is just making sure that I hit all the pieces of the puzzle. And if that's come together, then what we always run on the boat is usually a 3-rod system each. Obviously, I don't know, some days more or whatever, but with us and the dog and everything and all the things, that's just how it works out. And so I'm just excited to get back to that because right now I've been using mostly 2 rods. And one of the oh goodness, must be
there's a chip
deer right outside. No. Oh my gosh,
Finley, enough.
But I one of the things is when the fish are biting like that, you know, you don't want to have to take the time to like retie jigs and stuff. So if you have multiple presentations that are set up, that is something that is going to help you be an effective angler. Yep. That's the way to do it. Okay, awesome. I guess the other thing that I'm going to do going into this weekend is if that water temperature had cooled down like a little bit with all of this rain, but fish I think are still in that mentality of like spring and summer and weed lines and make it happen, and rain is going to happen, right? And so I think I'm also going to use something with a spinner blade on it. Like use something a little bit flashy for the fish that are done spawning to really get attention. So if rain has muddied up the waters, or if the clarity is down, or things like that, minnows are growing. And so I think I'm going to drag even a spinner, maybe even troll a spinner. I don't think that's super traditional, but whatever. We try all kinds of things.
Yep.
And so that is one thing that I am going to do coming into this weekend.
Yeah, and that's a good point. One of the things about trolling inline spinners is you need to have a way, especially with some of those small ones, to get them down a little bit. Split shots work great, but this is another case where you can get some really small tackle. If you look at some of the home bait makers or some of the small specialty shops, and we have some. I think we have some 16th and 32nd ounce bullet weights for doing mini Texas rigs. If you guys follow us at all, like that was one of my favorites on the Wolf River was mini Texas rigs, throwing that, making your own screws and putting that 1-inch baits and being able to pitch them up into log jams. It's really fun. Haven't had much use for them, but if you're running spinners, we might have to put like a little bead and a little weight in front of your swivel, and we can get that spinner down there.
I want to use like the spinners that I got when I went to MEPS.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The inline spinners. So then you just run your leader, but you have the weight on the front, so you can get your desired depth. Otherwise, what happens is
I was running a 32nd ounce jig this past weekend. I think it's going to work out.
You do you. I don't know anything about tackle design.
This is why we're in the boat together, is because we try all kinds of things, and I think people so often get concerned in what you have to do, or you have to do things certain ways or whatever.
Yep.
And I don't know, we do things even just different from each other, so that I think that's why sometimes we try unique stuff. So who knows what's going to happen, and we will report back, I promise. But I guess other than that, one of the things I'm going to be doing is making sure that my tackle box is all filled up with jigs and plastics and all that kind of stuff. But hopefully, other than that, we're just going to be dodging raindrops.
Yeah, I don't know. It's only supposed to rain Saturday. I just had my birthday on Monday, and if anybody remembers, we went out and dug up some Wisconsin moonstone for your birthday. And so besides fishing, Emily and I are both a little bit of rock nerds, kind of.
Well, just like nature, hiking, whatever gets you out there.
So we kind of got in touch with the Rock and Mineral group out of Anigo here, and they're having a little get together, their summer get together. So we're gonna go see them on Saturday. Maybe visit our friends the Andersons for a graduation party. A little buddy Aiden, the dog sitter, ice cream eater, went and graduated. So we might stop by and join the Marines. So we might stop by and say hi to them. So Saturday should be fun, and then hopefully all those rigs you're talking about will be all rigged up, ready to go for Saturday morning or Sunday morning.
We'll find out. Either way, we will report back. And I got to be honest, that is all that I had planned to talk about this evening. And actually, we didn't even have a plan for this evening because we planned to talk to Steve. So we will have them on again another time. But is there anything else that you want to chat about while we're here?
No, not really. Just keep an eye out on the Wisconsin Ice Fishing Expo group page. They're putting out some good information.
Icefishexpo.com.
Yep, icefishexpo.com. You can see there's a whole bunch of new vendors getting added in there. All the ones from last year coming back, it sounds like. So that should be good.
At the new, bigger venue.
In
Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I guess the reason I said that is because the other thing I was just going to say is coming up this weekend is, as the weather gets nicer, all kinds of different events coming up. And so if you are local to the Oshkosh area, down just south of that in Fond du Lac, I've heard there is Walleye Weekend going on. So if you are going to be taking part of that, let me know how that goes. I feel like I went one time a really long time ago, and then every year since, I missed the announcement and I don't find out about it until like the weekend of. And so now I have to choose if I'm actually going fishing Sunday or if I'm going to Walleye Weekend. So hit us up if it's a really fun thing, if you think that we should go, or if you are going, let us know all about it. Because I'm super interested in that. And we'll have to keep our eyes peeled for future years. Because all those different fishing events are really fun to go to. So
yeah, one more thing. It's Free Fishing Michigan and weekend, or Free Fishing Weekend in Michigan this weekend. So if you are looking for a reason to head up to the UP if you're in Wisconsin, or if you're over by Lower and you want to get out fishing, you don't have a license yet, this is the weekend to try it out. So keep that in mind. There's some great spots in the UP. There's some great spots in Lower. So go check out the fishing over there this weekend.
And I guess with that, that's most of what we had. So if you spent your time with us, we appreciate you being here. We're going to have some fun guests coming up in the next few weeks here. And we always love chatting fishing and bringing our reports and all of that kind of good stuff. So thank you to everyone who is here with us this evening, and looking forward to seeing everyone on next week's edition of The Night Bite.
Night, everybody.